Hello and welcome back to Webheads Comic Club. It's been a little while. Sorry for the absence. If you saw the last episode, you know that I was sick as a dog when we were recording that. And I mentioned on other videos on my channel, if you didn't see them, I did test positive for COVID, and I was out of commission for basically a month and a half. I mean, I had COVID for a week and a half, had some lasting issues after that, so we weren't able to do the podcast until now, but we are back. It's been almost 2 months, but JP, how you doing?
I've been pretty good. I've just been waiting for you to get back on the horse so we can start doing this again.
I was waiting myself.
The one thing I did think, though, is, we had the podcast where you mentioned that you had COVID, right? And that went out.
Right.
And then after that released, you completely went ghost on the internet. And so anybody that doesn't follow you on Twitter, at least, I think that's really the only place I've seen you post, at least, must have been very worried.
Hopefully not.
It's just,
I meant to put out a video and be like, hey, here's why I'm gone. But I was literally just bedridden, I was not focusing on YouTube. I was focusing on obviously getting better. But I started feeling sick. We recorded that episode. We put that episode up. And then I tested positive a day or two after that. And I was just run-of-the-mill, COVID, sick, had all the symptoms for a week and a half. And then I thought I would get better and I'd be able to go back to normal. So I thought maybe we'd skip 1 week. And then I've just had, and I talked about this a little bit in Around the Boxes, so I won't talk about it too much, but I had just lasting respiratory issues, chest pain, breathing difficulties, different stuff like that. Still having that a little bit. So if I am breathing kind of weirdly or clearing my throat a lot or anything like that, I apologize to our listeners because I know that can be annoying. I'm trying not to, but obviously, can't really control it that much. But yeah, no, we were gone. It feels, we were talking right before we started recording that it feels like it's been less time than it actually has since the last episode went up, because this episode is actually a re-recording because we filmed this episode about a month ago and I did a whoopsie and messed up the audio. So
right. I just didn't have any audio. You should have just released it.
I thought about it, I thought about dubbing it, like trying to lip sync and figure out what you said and then just have you record lines.
You should get someone that's not me. You should get one of our other friends to just record my lines for me.
That would have been hilarious.
Try to pretend to be me.
It would have been a lot of work. I still have the video, so maybe we can do that as a bonus feature.
A little bonus feature, but
yeah.
I did record the 4, 5, or 6 episodes. You were gone by myself, but I guess you deemed them to be not kid friendly or something like that, so I guess we just had to scrap those.
That is a lie. That did not happen. But no, I had everything with COVID, and then when I thought I was getting better, I was like, all right, let's record another episode. And we sat down, we recorded this episode, and then I went to edit it, to upload it, and JP just had no audio. I had messed up the audio settings, and it was just me talking, and James's mouth was moving, and there was no audio, so I was like, dang it. And then immediately after was when my COVID stuff got worse. So I was like, all right, guess we're just going to have to try again and whenever I'm ready. So we might have a little bit of deja vu when we're recording this episode because we have already discussed these comic books, but we're back.
Back for round 2. See if it goes better.
See if it goes better.
I'm happy because we're discussing some really... a roller coaster of 5 issues here.
A roller coaster of 5 issues. I am going to be kind of jogging my memory as we go along because it's also been, it's been a month since we've recorded a Webheads episode. It's also been a month since I've read any of these comic books. So I've kind of missed it because I was enjoying reading the issues every week. So I'm excited to get it going again so I can actually start reading the next ones. But I guess we can just go ahead and dive into it. I think that's enough rambling about all the crap that's been going on so far this year.
What ails you? Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, 2022 has been off to an interesting start.
Speaking of 20.
Speaking of 20, issue number 20. For reminders, in case anyone has forgotten, since it has been a while since our last episode, this episode we are talking about Amazing Spider-Man 20, 21, 22, 23, and 24. So working through those 5 issues. So if you want to read along with us, go ahead and pause the episode. Go read those comic books. I highly recommend you read the comics yourself.
If you haven't read them, you had 2 months.
Exactly.
If you haven't read them yet, what are you doing?
Mm-hmm. Now, you don't have to read along with us, but I highly recommend reading along with us because really, as much as we can discuss these comic books and give our thoughts on them, nothing can substitute reading them yourself.
Especially the ones.
Yeah, especially these ones. I mean, it's classic Stan Lee, classic Steve Ditko. But let's dive into issue number 20. We are going to just dive straight into this book and discuss it. Now, first of all, I think, and I'm really jogging my memory here, you had said this was the issue you were most excited for this episode. Am I correct?
Let me jog my own memory.
It was either this or 23.
It was this and 23. I love the Scorpion. He is in my top 6 favorite. Obviously, going to do top 6 instead of top 5. I love the Scorpion. He's kind of like that lower level kind of street thuggish kind of category of Spider-Man villains. I think he's one of the best, if not the best, at that level.
I had completely forgotten until reading this issue that he's also just completely batshit crazy.
Right.
Like total psycho.
Yeah, I mean, like most super villains.
Really. Well, I feel like that kind of fades from his character a little bit in the more recent books.
Yeah.
But reading this definitely brought it to the forefront. But so this was definitely one you were anticipating. Did it live up to the hype? How do you feel about it overall?
You know, it was pretty good. I mean, I this is one of the issues I remember pretty well because I have the issue.
Mm-hmm. I do not.
20.
It's a little brown
got 20.
there.
Excuse me. Maybe a little. It's got some. Yeah.
It's just the green. It makes it show up a little bit.
No, it's just the cover. Actually, no. I'm kidding. Just a piece of the cover.
Yeah, you have the coverless annual one, and then just the cover of 20.
I think I should staple them together. There you go.
Collectors everywhere just cringed. As you were saying,
I just got 29, which I'm actually really excited for. That's
next episode. Or 25, 6, 9. Yeah, that's next episode.
That's next episode.
Yeah.
This was a really good issue. I like Scorpion more as he progresses through his character than I guess right when he just started. But this is a classic origin story for Spider-Man villains.
Yeah.
And it not only is a new villain, but it's a continuation of our main villain through these first 20 issues, which is J. Jonah Jameson.
Mm.
So, yeah, I think it lived up to the hype. It lived up to my hype.
J. Jonah Jameson has been hyped up. I mean, the entirety of this podcast, we've been talking about how he is just building up to this villain role. This is the episode where it really starts to hit the fan, and going into next episode is when JJ is like a full-blown menace himself. But diving into this book, first thing we gotta address, right there on the splash page, I loved on the credits, it has illustrated by Steve Ditko in like black text, and then it says written by Stan Lee in big red text. And specifically next to it, it says, many readers have asked why Stan's name is always first on the credits, and so Big-Hearted Lee agreed to put Stevie's name first this time. And they're just totally dunking on Steve with Stan's name being big. Like, is it any surprise that Steve Ditko hated Stan Lee? Like, is that any surprise?
I mean, this is funny though. I mean, if you don't find this type of thing funny though, you're probably a little bit jaded about something.
A little bit, but also like, it is funny. But man, they're really giving it to him. I mean, come on. As thousands of people would want to be a fly on the wall of their relationship and see actually what went down. And this couldn't happen because there was no one there filming it. But if someone made like a documentary about Stan Lee and Steve Ditko's relationship, like with footage in their offices and stuff, that would be gold.
I mean, we don't even like have pictures of Steve Ditko.
Yeah, Steve Ditko. I mean, for anyone who doesn't know, Steve Ditko, obviously the artist of all of the books we've reviewed so far. Him and Stan Lee's relationship was pretty strained. That's why I pointed out this credits thing, because that's kind of, Stan probably thought it was just a good-hearted joke. Steve probably held some resentment because of it.
I didn't like it.
And their relationship kind of hit a boiling point later on, a couple years from this. And Steve left Spider-Man and left Marvel, and basically just wanted nothing to do with the whole Marvel phenomenon. I mean, he didn't go to conventions, he didn't go to signings. Like, there are a select few of people who got signatures by mailing books into him, but most of the time, I mean, he just kind of became a recluse.
Fully.
So, it's a shame, because, obviously he co-created Spider-Man, and he still gets credited to this day, but he wasn't for a long time. For a while, Spider-Man was just credited towards Stan Lee, and that was part of his gripe. But anyway, diving into the actual content of the book, this follows up on the ending of issue 9, where we saw Peter getting followed by some mysterious person, and we didn't know who it was, or who they're working for.
Right.
And we had some theories. Where were we on the theories? Did you feel like you knew who it was?
I knew who it was.
Okay.
Because like I said, I love the Scorpion, so I knew who it was. At first, I was like, oh, this could be really anybody. It could be J. Jonah, obviously. It could be some random guy, but I knew who it was, so I couldn't really have too much fun with it.
I also knew who it was because I knew the person was tied to Scorpion's origin. But as I've been reading these books and trying to read them as a first-time reader, as if they were coming out in the 60s and I have no clue what's going on, I was intrigued. I didn't know who it was, and the issue begins right off with this guy following Peter around, and he's kind of, he sees him, and he's like, oh, who's this guy following me? And he starts to investigate. And pretty quickly it's revealed that it is, in fact, J. Jonah Jameson that the guy works for. Not very surprising. Although, the question that I had when I read this was, why is J. Jonah Jameson following Peter Parker?
Right. And the answer, to see how he takes such great photos of Spider-Man.
That's what he says. I think he suspects something.
Now,
JJ's not an idiot.
Hold your damn horses over here. You want to go ahead and say that, but you don't want to even hear about my Aunt May.
There's no way. I think literally Aunt May in this comic just now, Spider-Man jumped into his room and Aunt May comes in. She's like, "Are you okay? I heard a loud noise." Like, she doesn't think he's Spider-Man.
Yes, she does though, because even in the you don't know about this because you're living in the 60s.
Right.
But when she does say, I've known it for a long time, obviously, Stan didn't write those books. So, you can't say, okay, maybe he wasn't putting that in there.
Mm-hmm.
Pretty much saying, though, that she said all those things that she's saying now to kind of make sure he was good and to put him on the right path.
I mean, all I'll say is, you've got your theory. We said as we read through these, we're gonna look and see if we can spot when Aunt May figures it out. I just don't think I can definitively say it's happened yet. It could have.
I think it did. I don't remember what issue it was, but I think it was last episode.
I think it was last episode as well. Where it was. What happened? It's hard to remember. I don't know. Go check out last episode if you want to remind yourself. Yeah, so we don't have to. So Peter goes back to the Bugle, sees JJ there, and then that's when it's revealed that this guy who's tailing him is working for JJ. And when we kind of learn his identity, and this is Mac Gargan.
Mac Gargan, what a name.
Who, even before he becomes crazy later in this issue, he's kind of already a nut job, to be honest with you.
Yeah. Generally speaking, to have those type of tests or experiments done on you, just for some money, I get it to a certain extent, right? But you gotta be a little bit off.
And even just right from the get-go, I mean, he's just clearly a criminal for hire. So morally, obviously not the best guy, and JJ is super happy to hire him. So what does that say about JJ? We will see. But
JJ is the real menace. But they go to the scientist. That again. The pictures show that he's having fish walk, like a fish is on like a tree branch, and there's a rat swimming. How is he just chilling? People should know about him.
He's not more famous than he is. But this is the Marvel Universe. I mean, they got the Fantastic Four running around. So is that the most groundbreaking science?
You know what? You're right. When you got a guy that bursts into flames and flies around, I guess a fish walking.
Yeah, exactly. They're like, "Oh, a fish on a stick. What does that do?"
It's kind of de-evolution. That's what we were fish just walking at some point, right?
Yeah, exactly. So, not the biggest deal, but the scientist they go to. We did. That is immediately after the scene where we do meet Ned Leeds for pretty much the first time, who is obviously a major character down the line in the Spider-Man books, but really in this episode and in these issues, starts to pose a threat to Peter and Betty, which I had thought that they were pretty much over. But in these issues, it kind of seems like will they, won't they, and then they're over.
Right.
So I don't know. I'm curious to see when, in fact, it does actually like definitively end between them. Not there yet, apparently, but
Ned Leeds, man, this poor guy. What a couple years he's about to have.
I
Not a couple
don't know what you're
decades.
talking about. He's just a love interest for Betty. I don't.
He's about to go on a wild ride.
He's have some interesting times, but so yeah, they go to this scientist with the fish on the tree and the rat and the mouse in the water, and JJ is basically like, "Hey, I hate Spider-Man. Let's make another Spider-Man to kill him." Flawed logic. Makes no sense.
I mean, you gotta have if you're trying to kill a spider, you gotta have something that is able to kill a spider, and I'm sure a scorpion can kill a spider.
Yeah.
Scorpions may even kill spiders.
And you mentioned it earlier, with almost no hesitation, this guy's like, "Yeah, sure, you can shave my head and experiment on me for."
He's down to clown. He's like, let's get it.
How much money does he offer him?
I want to say it was $10K, which is a lot back then.
$10,000 is a lot back then. Yeah.
It was. I'll pay you $10,000. My memory is. It's all those fish oils I'm taking. I'll tell you what.
Okay, so $10,000. Back then, comic book was 12 cents. Nowadays it's $4. So
10,
whatever 10,000, quick math, I don't know, times 10 times 4. 10,000 times 10, 100,000. It's like multiple $100,000 at least. So it is a sizable amount of money, which kind of reminds me. Yes.
Would you shave your head and become a scorpion man for a couple $100,000?
Do I get superpowers?
Well, you become a scorpion man, yeah.
Am I gonna go crazy like him?
Well, you're saying he was already crazy, and I don't know if they're really. I don't think the serum is what, or whatever they experiment, is what made him crazy. I think
They do mention the doc says
Do
that
they?
the serum makes him evil.
Oh yeah, okay, I forgot that. Okay, I forgot.
Yeah.
Okay, everything's
Yeah.
coming back to me now.
Because, scorpions are just inherently evil, apparently.
Well, I mean, he had a lot of testing done to him. Then yeah, you do.
Oh, well then no.
Oh.
If I
But
could
you
if I
wouldn't.
could just get superpowers to just have superpowers, like, I wouldn't hesitate.
Well, you probably would do it for free then.
Yeah, exactly. So
But then there's no.
yeah, but if you become evil, then you either die or go to jail, and you don't get to do anything with that money. So,
Well,
although
current year, Scorpion dead or in jail.
I have no idea.
Exactly.
But
Tough name.
if we're talking about the real world, there's no superheroes. So would you really get caught, or would you get to get away with it? That's a whole different thing. Then
And
it's
would you want to get away with it?
then it's a whole moral dilemma. Not gonna dive into that. I would say no.
Tune in next episode. We spent an hour and a half discussing that one topic.
Yeah, philosophical discussion. No. So okay, here's my problem with this book. Scorpion's origin is really freaking stupid.
God, I cannot with you, dude. Are you kidding me?
Like,
Sandman's was like crazy good.
like the whole J. Jonah Jameson thing, hiring him is fine. Like, that's cool. But literally, this doctor just being like, "I'm going to give you the powers of a scorpion." He's like, "Your hands are pinchers now, except they look like normal hands. And here, I made a mechanical tail for you." It's dumb.
Dr. Octopus's origin, Sandman's origin,
So much cooler. So much better.
the Lizard is baller, Electro's origin, the Green Goblin's origin.
All better. Scorpion's origin is
I don't
dumb.
know. There's some weight to this.
And he looks, in these panels where he's bald and muscly, he looks like Crusher Hogan from the first issue.
It is weird that they made him bald. And I will tell you one thing. I think we discussed this too. His tail is not. His tail is mechanic, which for whatever reason I forever always thought it was.
I thought, because I'm pretty
Part of
sure
it.
at some point later he gets like fused
Does
with
it?
it.
Oh, confused with it.
Because it gets, and maybe I'm thinking of like one of the video games or something, but I swear I remember him like being bitter about it because it's like permanently fused to his body. But yeah, in this, no.
It gets like a. What's the word I'm looking for? A spike on it.
Anyway, before James made me cut out his mom calling him Dudley Wumpkins, Scorpion's dumb, basically, is my point. He's fine, but like in this issue, he's pretty dumb.
I disagree with you wholeheartedly, and I don't really know what your problem is, dude.
I'm just
Are you cranky today?
I'm just not interested in Scorpion. Like when I'm reading this book, it doesn't interest me, and especially so he's got his powers now, right? Peter pretty much figures out. Has he figured out that JJ was following him yet?
I don't know if he figured out JJ was. Oh, maybe he did.
Oh no, he goes to JJ Yes, he
Well,
he
he
did
had someone
figure
to
it out.
follow.
He did figure it out. Yeah.
Did, yeah.
So he goes to spy on JJ as Spider-Man, and then dog cameo. Let's get it every episode. It's not getting cut out. It's going in. Anyway, then Scorpion attacks him right outside of the Daily Bugle, which should be the immediate hint that he's in the works with J. Jonah Jameson, but Spider-Man still doesn't figure that out. Whatever that's about. But the reason, again, not only is Scorpion's origin dumb, but him as a villain is really dumb. Like, I'm talking Sandman levels of dumb. Because this man attacks
You don't like
Spider-Man.
Sandman?
Well, Sandman's dumb, like, intellectually dumb.
Right.
This
Well,
man,
I don't think he is.
This man attacks Spider-Man, beats him, leaves him. Spider-Man recovers.
But that's what they all
Goes
do.
and fights
Vulture
him.
Did that. The Vulture
He
did
beats
that,
him
like, 3
again,
times.
and then leaves him again. Spider-Man and Scorpion fight, what, 3 times in this issue? Scorpion beats him every time until the end, and never decides to finish him off. He's like, I'll leave him and finish him later. And then, of course, Spider-Man comes back again and ends up beating him. Scorpion is stupid.
The Vulture did it about 20 times.
It was different, though, because they had, like, at least a motive that makes sense, but this is just like, I'm going to go on a reign of terror because I'm crazy. But, throughout the fight scenes, I mean, this issue is a lot of fight scenes, so there's not much to talk about there. We do see the Doctor kind of realizing that the serum is going to make him evil.
So about the Doctor, I just need to mention the fact that this really hit me hard. The Doctor died.
He did die, which is... That's not the first death in the books.
No, it's not, but it just became drawing because I didn't think that was going to happen. I thought he was going to get saved somehow, or...
I mean, it's kind
He
of
wasn't-
entirely his fault, though.
he wasn't going to fall off. Yeah, I mean, yeah, but he got paid $10,000 as well.
Well, he got paid. I'm saying he made Scorpion, and that's his fault, but he did it for the money. But then he goes after Scorpion and starts climbing a freaking building to try and get him to take the
okay, yeah.
serum. And then, shocker, he falls off the building and dies. Which, the most shocking part of this is that Spider-Man just, like, swings in a second later, and he's like, too late for that guy. Anyway.
And the Doctor tried to, I think... I don't know if he purposely tried to throw the serum, but he threw the serum and he completely missed the Scorpion.
Yeah.
He smacks up against the building and just...
He was trying to throw it at him, I think.
Okay.
But yeah, now Scorpion's just full on evil. He's like, I'm going on my reign of terror. I'm going to be a supervillain. Spider-Man does not care at all that this guy just fell to his death.
Nope.
But he does go to stop Scorpion. And
So at first, J. Jonah was like, I can't believe this is going to happen again. I'm going to get embarrassed. And I also spent $20,000. And now, after this guy died and Scorpion's full-blown crazy, J. Jonah a little bit is like, I can't believe it. This is actually all my fault.
he's
No
like,
one knows it's all my fault.
and you would think that he would learn his lesson.
No, this is he's just like, another failed plan. I guess I'll go to the next one.
JJ just never learns his lesson. He always has a plot. It always goes wrong. And he's like, humiliated again. And cycle goes round. It kind of reminds me of, I don't know if as a kid you ever watched the Pokemon show, but you know, there's Team Rocket. Everyone knows Team Rocket, right? Every episode of that show, Team Rocket shows up. They have some plan. They get foiled, and they're like, Team Rocket blasting off again, or whatever. J. Jonah Jameson reminds me of Team Rocket, because no matter how many times he fails, he's just always like, oh, I have the perfect plan now. It'll work.
But what is this guy's motive even?
I think we dive into it.
We dove into it, but it was just more like his ego and the fact that he hates that Spider-Man's probably pretty much a better person than he is.
Pretty much, yeah. It's kind
I
of
think at some point he'd be
jealousy.
Yeah, it's just a weird.
It's weird, but it does make sense, and I think it gets developed more down the line and like into the modern books. He's obviously changed a lot.
Spider-Man and Scorpion continue to fight again. Also, Scorpion is very strong. You don't like the Scorpion. He's literally like grasping onto this building, and the building's like cracking from his hand.
Yeah, because he has pincher fingers.
Yeah, and that's sick.
That makes no sense. They didn't physically change. How are they sharp?
Who's your favorite villain?
How
Dr.
are they
Octopus?
sharp? They're still round fingers.
Dr. Octopus?
Dr. Octopus is cool.
And so is the Scorpion. The Shocker?
Shocker is like maybe top 10 for me. Like he's not even that high up.
But you liked him a lot.
I'd like him, but he's not. It's like Carnage and Doctor Octopus, like, I go back and forth on which of those would be my favorite. Carnage is sick, so you can't even say nothing about Carnage.
No, I can't.
I think I'd probably say he's my favorite just because growing up he was always my favorite. But I don't know. I think in this comic book alone, basing it solely off of this story, like if I'm reading this in the 60s and this is the only issue that I have to read of the Scorpion, I'm thinking the Scorpion is the lamest villain so far in the series. Hands down.
I don't know how you say that when there's the Enforcers.
The Enforcers are fun though. Like
But they're not though.
Like what's the leader, the big man or whatever? He was cool.
No, I like the big man, but he's not even the leader in the
I like the gang, you know, when he's fighting just like regular people. I don't know. Just super villain wise, Scorpion is weak. His costume is dumb. The first version of his costume.
His costume is sick as heck.
As heck.
Okay. And his origin story, awesome. Multi-layered.
I just don't see it.
And he's pretty cool.
I just don't see it. But
and I don't get the hate. I don't get the hate over here.
Going into the climax of the issue, I almost said the movie. Spider-Man beats Scorpion, obviously rips off his tail and makes quick work of him. One thing that I think we both liked about this issue was that you actually see his costume get torn up a bit.
Yep.
So you get a little bit of that battle-worn look that is obviously very famous in the Raimi movies. Yeah, I guess he beats Scorpion. He goes to JJ, and he's like, hey, here's the Scorpion, take him to the police. And JJ just totally gets away with his association with him. And that's pretty much the end of the issue. It ends with him kind of sewing up his costume. And Jameson is a hero because Scorpion is caught, pretty much.
Right.
Now, this is a scene with Aunt May.
This is it? This is it?
At the very end, no, there is a scene with Aunt May where he's bruised and she's checking him out. She sure doesn't seem to think that he's Spider-Man.
But she knows he's Spider-Man, but that's why she's so worried. Because she knows this happened with the fight, probably knows about the Scorpion and what happened earlier that day. That's why she's so worried.
She literally says, you know how fragile you are, though.
Saying that, make sure you be careful because you're fragile.
I just don't see it. I don't see it.
Man, you are backwards.
I just don't like this issue. There is another pinup. Is that pinup in your book?
Damn, is it in my book?
I mean, you don't have to check, but
I'm not gonna check. No, but I think they're. Like again, I'm so confused. I don't know. I would have to check. Because I know I have a book that doesn't have the pinup in it, and I don't know if it's the issue 20.
Okay. One letter at the back of this issue that I do want to point out before we move on to the next one. There was one letter where he says, I've been reading the letters about having Spider-Man join a team. I say having Spider-Man join a team is like having Jonah Jameson dating Aunt May. And that's the whole letter. So they did not want him to join a team, but also Jonah dating Aunt May, kind of close to something that happens down the line.
Kind of close. Yeah.
A little bit. But overall, how would you rate this issue 1 out of 10? What do you give it?
I'd say 10.5. Okay. I would give it a cool 7.5.
That's pretty low for a book that you claim to love and defend so vehemently.
I'm defending Scorpion as a whole, not
Okay.
exactly just this issue.
Okay. Yeah, I would rate this issue 4.5.
You are crazy. You gotta be pulling my leg.
Because
I think that was lower than your original rating.
Because
Rewind the footage.
The reason I just went with 4.5 now is because I think the lowest I've rated any book so far in the podcast is probably like a 6. And this is easily one of my least favorites in the series so far. So I feel like it has to be on the lower end of the spectrum.
I literally can't grasp my head around why.
It's just not that good. It's not that good.
But it is dope.
The only thing it has going for it is, oh, this new villain beats Spider-Man. But that's happened before, because guess who did it? Dr. Octopus did it first.
Oh my god, everybody beats Spider-Man for 2 seconds and then they leave him alone and then he comes back.
But Dr. Octopus did it first.
Dr. Octopus is weird. He's a weird guy.
Yeah, he's a villain. Of course he's weird. Like, I'm sorry, Carnage is a serial killer. Like, we're not justifying these guys' personalities. Anyway.
But you liked issue 10 more than this? I did. Issue 10 was pretty good.
I did like issue 10 more than this.
I just can't.
I gotta say, I mean.
You like issues we're about to venture to next more than issue 20.
Well, I haven't rated them yet. Because the next issue is kind of another stinker in my opinion. This is issue
It
21.
sucks.
It is issue 21. This is featuring the Human Torch. Obviously, they've crossed over a lot.
Once again.
We're kind of sick of him. And then it has his villain, the Beetle.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah, this issue's not good. It's a little. There's some elements of it that I did enjoy. But overall, it's obviously not an iconic issue. I mean, it's not one of those early first appearances or anything like that. It's just a crossover with Human Torch.
I will say the one thing is I didn't know the Beetle was not primarily a Spider-Man villain. I thought he was primarily a Spider-Man villain.
Yeah, I thought the same thing.
In the Ultimate Comics, he might be just a Spider-Man villain.
He's kind of become a Spider-Man villain because I think he was in this and that kind of crossed him over.
Right.
But yeah, this references his first appearance in Strange Tales, which was a Human Torch title at the time. But the Beetle is not interesting as a villain at all. I mean, he just gets out of jail and he's like, all right, I'm going to go attack Human Torch. Like, the motive just doesn't really make any sense. So that makes it a little less interesting, but...
Almost like it's even way less of a motive than the Scorpion, but I don't see you here rating this book.
Because the Beetle is not on an all-time greats list of Spider-Man villains. So I hold his first...
At least my top 7.
I hold him to a slightly different standard than I hold the Scorpion's first appearance.
Yeah, likely story.
But, so this book... Oh, man, this book is frustrating to read. Genuinely.
It really is. I mean, I like the Fantastic Four. I do like the Fantastic Four. But I really want to stop seeing the Human Torch in these books for a little bit. I mean, it's just kind of it's the same thing, but just a little bit topping itself each time. Like in this issue, it starts out with once again Spider-Man just being very jealous of the Human Torch, and the Human Torch just kind of upstating him every single time they encounter each other. And people like Human Torch more than Spider-Man. He's kind of upset about that.
Yeah.
I mean, just kind of every issue that starts with, and like I said, it kind of increases each time.
Yeah. It is interesting, like, to see, because as a, in the year 2022, knowing that Spider-Man and Human Torch end up becoming very good friends, we're obviously seeing that relationship kind of work itself out. I just didn't realize prior to starting this podcast how much the Human Torch was in these early issues. I mean, I'd obviously seen the covers and I knew the books and I knew the key issues, but it had never really occurred to me that he's in almost every other book.
Yeah.
And so he's really a recurring side character in the Spider-Man books, which is
and he's like really
weird.
in this book itself kind of has. It's not just the Human Torch like flamed on, like it's the Human Torch, and some troubles with his girl.
Yeah.
As well. So it's
proper crossover.
Yeah, proper crossover. It dives a bit deeper than the other ones.
Yeah.
Which is nice.
Which it does. The one element of this book that I did enjoy is the Human Torch's girlfriend. The whole, like, it's so corny but goofy and actually funny. I did genuinely kind of laugh a few times reading it. I didn't care. I could care less about the Beetle. So any of the fight scenes with the Beetle, I did not care about. But when, what's her name even? Dory? When Dory is giving Johnny crap, that's hilarious. When she ends up calling, well, I guess I'm getting ahead of myself, but any of the scenes kind of making a joke out of her and Johnny, I did enjoy those.
Also, her kind of having the hots for Peter.
A little.
He's such, or like what she said, she's like, this is my chance to try to make Johnny more of a gentleman, like that nice, refined Peter Parker.
Oh yeah. So I guess to summarize,
hot, but she's like, she likes some of his.
She thinks he's a gentleman. So we kind of jumped around a little bit to summarize what's happening in the story. Basically, Johnny Storm has this girl Dory that he is dating, courting, whatever. I don't know what they are. And basically, she is mad at him for always being Human Torch. She's telling him, you need to not be Human Torch for 24 hours. You just need to be Johnny Storm. I just want my regular boyfriend, whatever. And so they have this argument, and he agrees. He says, okay, I won't be Human Torch for 24 hours. And the Beetle overhears this. And so his master plan is, of course, to attack her and use her as, like, bait to lure out Johnny and do that thing. And then what we were just referencing, Dory runs into Peter Parker on the street, and he, being the gentleman that he is, ladies' man that he is, more like, offers to help her carry her stuff and pick it up, and then she leaves her wallet, and he takes it to her house, and she offers him a Coca-Cola.
Again, I don't know if they were sponsored back then, but
Yeah, I don't know. It just felt weird to me. I mean, she walks out, she's like, "Let me fix you a glass of Coke." Like,
I think we talked about it when we first recorded this. If that's the thing that actually happened back then,
yeah.
that's insane.
Yeah, like, is that actual social activity in the 60s? Like, here, come in for a glass of Coke, and they just sit down and drink their Coke and then leave. Like, you would not do that nowadays. At least I wouldn't do that nowadays.
I don't even open the door when people ring my doorbell. Just...
You say, leave the package on the ground, and just hide behind the door. So that's some old 60s socializing. And Johnny sees Peter leaving and gets all jealous.
Right.
Which...
And Betty... sees that whole thing as well, and so Betty, once again, with her usual routine of he likes some other girl, yada yada yada, and then Peter gets very mad at the human matchstick and crushes some concrete with his hand.
Yep. Johnny thinks that it's a good idea to show up in costume and try to intimidate Peter, and Betty does her usual thing, like you said, and starts crying about it. I'm getting real sick of the Betty Peter shtick. Like, y'all just need to learn to communicate. They're terrible at it.
I know.
But, yeah, so that ultimately angers Peter, and you actually see Peter get really mad at Johnny. And so they're not getting along at all. But Peter, also not being very smart. This issue really reminds you that both of these characters are teenagers, because neither of them is very smart.
Because I feel like this is... in this world would be something a teenager would do.
It adds up. It adds up. Peter decides, oh, well, Johnny doesn't like Peter Parker flirting with his girl. Well, maybe Spider-Man should go flirt with his girl.
So he dresses up, and he goes to her house. Alas, the Beetle has some plans for Dory as well. So the Beetle's just waiting at Dory's house for the Human Torch. Now, that's what his big plan is?
Yeah, the Beetle was waiting.
Yeah, he was waiting, yeah. But then Spider-Man shows up, and a fight riles up with the two of them.
Yep. Which is very good, because it would have been awful if Peter tried to go in and flirt with Spider-Man, because that would have been just awkward as
right, that
everything.
Would have been weird. So the Beetle and Spider-Man are fighting, and Dory sees this, and she calls up the Human Torch, and pretty much says, like, you need to get over here. The Beetle and Spider-Man are fighting on my front lawn, which is a crazy thing to think about, being in that situation, looking out your window. And Johnny's pretty much just like, you're not going to get me to be the Human Torch. I'm laying on my couch. Stop with that. Someone just trick me. It's not funny.
It is my favorite scene in the whole issue. Literally just, yeah, he's like, you're not going to get me like that. And she's like, no, I'm genuinely serious. That's hilarious.
Good old Dory. I always did like a guy with a sense of humor, and he is cheesing, bro. Hands back.
Meanwhile, things are just like the fight is absolutely breaking out.
Meanwhile, there's a human robot Beetle and a spider guy fighting on our front lawn,
and then breaking into her house and fighting through her house.
Through the house. Yeah.
So ultimately, Johnny decides to go visit anyway, as Johnny Storm, but too late to rescue her, because the Beetle takes her, and Spider-Man goes after the Beetle. Now, we have learned that Peter has bad communication skills through his interactions with Betty, but never is that on more display than in this scene with Johnny Storm, because, oh my gosh, these guys need to learn how to talk to each other.
Johnny goes to Dory's house and obviously finds the chaos left behind and the webbing left by Spider-Man, and is like, Spider-Man must have kidnapped her. So the Human Torch is literally following Spider-Man, throwing fireballs at him, trying to like kill him. And instead of being like, hey, listen, this is what's going on, Spider-Man's continuing to egg Johnny on.
Taunting him, fighting him, doesn't say anything about Dory, doesn't say anything about the Beetle. All he has to say is, hey, the Beetle took Dory, he's this way. But instead, he's just making fun of him and taunting him and bickering with him. And so they fight, of course, allowing the Beetle to get further away. And it takes a solid while before Johnny realizes that the Beetle has Dory. And Spider-Man's immediate reply is, well, that's what I've been trying to tell you.
No, you haven't.
Not once have you tried to tell him. Not once.
That's incredible. I really hope Stan, I'm sure he did, like, realize what he was doing with that whole thing, and, like, which is really making Peter kind of an ass.
I assume it's intentional.
No, it has to be.
I mean, they're teenagers. They're bickering teenagers. They've always kind of had a brother dynamic, right? But man, oh man, it's just like all you have to do is say, he's over here. But instead, they're fighting each other. And then they realize that the Beetle has Dory. And now, when they both go to try and fight the Beetle, they're just getting in each other's way the whole time. Not able to work together at all. And it's just almost allows the Beetle to get away.
They were together for about a split second where they both had pretty much kicked the Beetle in the face and then let him up.
Yeah. Like, as soon as they are able to work together, they beat him instantly, obviously.
And after the Beetle's webbed up, Dory's like, you know, hugging Johnny and stuff, and she's like, aren't you going to do something about that evil Spider-Man over there?
Yeah, you know, the guy that was trying to protect you.
Classic loves Peter, hates Spider-Man.
Yeah.
The moral of his
Classic
story.
Spider-Man getting a bad rap. Like, he was there protecting her from Beetle, and she's like, oh, he's terrible. But Johnny's continuing to be like, I don't know, I feel like Spidey's a good guy. Like, you can tell that he kind of does think he's a good guy, but for some reason he's just never able to get along with him. The one line I love from Johnny, it's actually a thought bubble. He says, I could understand if she fell for a guy like Spidey, but that Peter Parker guy, I just don't get it. So a little bit of irony there, of course. But that's pretty much the end of this issue. I don't really think there's a lot to discuss for that one.
No, another pinup.
Another kind of a filler issue, just filling the gaps between the major story events. Where would you rate that one on a scale of 10?
5.5.
5.5. See, you gave me so much crap for a 4.5, and you're gonna do 5.5.
Because it was the origin of one of the most popular villains in Marvel or Spider-Man.
Exactly. All the more reason to be critical of it. Anyway, I rate this one 5.0.
I'm gonna throw my almond book somehow through my screen at you.
This one is not good. What's wrong with a 5.0 on this?
Because you just said, oh my god, I can't believe you rated it a 5.0.
Well, because you gave me sass for my 4.5, so I thought it was deserved.
That was ridiculous.
Well, I said it, and I rated it lower than this issue, so I stand by that. This one was at least a little bit of fun. A little funny, right? 20 had nothing going for it, but moving on past the riffraff issue 21. What about this next issue? Kind of another filler issue, although, and I remember when we discussed about this the first time when we recorded this episode the first time. This issue is freaking hilarious.
Yeah, it's like actually funny.
It's so hilarious. I do have this issue, a little bit low grade, but I never really cared about this. Like, I remember I picked it up, I think, at a convention and just kind of had it. Now that I've read it, I actually appreciate having this book so much more because it's so funny. It's so funny.
I gotta get an issue 22 again. I used to have one, but I traded it for, like, one of the other early issues I have.
Right. I remember that, actually. So, diving into this book, I had no memory of who the actual villain of this book was. Like, I mean, you look at the cover and you see the clown and his Masters of Menace. I didn't know what was going on in this book until I started reading it and realized it's actually the return of the Ringmaster, who was the villain in issue 16. He led that carnival, the crossover with Daredevil. He's back. At least it seems like he's back.
I hate that guy.
Don't like the Ringmaster?
I do really like the cover with Spider-Man's shadow in it, like the spider signal. I think it's pretty cool.
It is, yeah.
If it was like some cooler characters in than them, yeah, I think it would be a classic cover.
That's the only thing that I always thought the cover was a little underwhelming because I didn't really care about any of the characters on it. But this book the pacing of this book is weird because it just jumps right into it with Spider-Man having found the Ringmaster and his crew, jumping in on them and basically being like, Ringmaster, you're not going to get away with this. I've caught you. And he's like, hey, I'm not doing anything. I'm innocent. And basically it was all a ploy for Spider-Man to leave a tracer on his hat.
Yes. And with that, the whole gang is like, I'm done with this guy.
Immediately. Yeah.
Immediately.
Which makes no sense.
And in busts in, what's her name? Princess Python? Is that
Princess Python. Now.
And pretty much blows smoke in the Ringmaster's face, quite literally, and then says, "We need a new leader." Everyone agrees. My second favorite part of this issue. Okay, I'm getting ahead of myself. I flipped the page. Am I?
It is in this scene.
We're going live. They pretty much fight the Ringmaster. Oh no! Okay, before that, yes, what happened? Literally before the fight, even Princess Python's like, "Okay, you know what? You know who needs to be the leader of the squad?
The
clown over
clown.
there.
The
That
clown.
clown in the corner. He's some real leader material.
Oh, this scene is
Not
so
you.
funny.
Not
Because
you, not like anybody else but the clown on the unicycle.
I'm going to get on my soapbox for a second here.
Get on.
Princess Python is the real villain of this issue.
True.
And I can't help but feel like the reason she's not actually the leader of the villains in this issue is because she's a woman. Not calling Stan Lee sexist, but this is the 60s. I don't know. Maybe I'm reading it wrong. But maybe he wrote it intentionally this way to have her kind of pulling the strings behind the scenes. But she comes into the scene immediately, like, takes a dominant presence in the room, right? Like,
Yeah.
she's obviously controlling the conversation. They're all kind of looking to her. And she's like, Ringmaster's out. Everyone agrees. You're out. We need a new leader. And I was just waiting for her to say, and it's going to be me. So when I tell you I laughed out loud for a solid minute when she's like, the clown!
The clown over
And
there.
it just shows a smiling clown juggling some balls like, aha, that's me. Makes zero sense whatsoever.
Like, this guy had one bit of dialogue before he was elected leader.
He said basically nothing.
Yeah.
And he's just elected the leader. And the clown is just my favorite character in this book. He's so funny.
I mean, he has my favorite part of this whole book later on. But then afterwards, they start fighting the Ringmaster, and he gets his butt whooped by everybody.
Yeah, they just beat him up. In every single panel that the clown is in, he is juggling. I love that. I just think that they're just having conversation, and he's just sitting there juggling for no reason whatsoever. But it's decided Ringmaster's out, clown's the leader. Obviously, Spider-Man's tracer does not help him now because he's tracing the Ringmaster, who's not a part of this group. So that worked out perfectly for them. And then it cuts over to Peter in school. Liz is doing a little bit more flirting with him.
Right.
Waiting for... When does she give up on that? Like, when does that happen?
I guess we'll find out, but I don't even know.
Yeah. And then Betty's here. Now, again, I thought they were over every single issue. She keeps on coming back. But now he's able to... They finally learn how to talk. And he's able to explain that he is not going after Johnny Storm's girlfriend. And she's immediately like, oh, okay, cool, then we're fine. And they get along. And then we go to the greatest scene of probably this episode.
Yes.
J. Jonah Jameson's art museum.
Oh, what an art museum it is. Let's take a look at the paintings, shall we?
Let's run through some of the art that we have in this
Let's do it.
art museum. First
off,
go ahead.
Everybody's loving these paintings. There's some thought bubbles of what may be a random man saying, boy, I wish I could draw feet like that. Draw feet like what have you? It is a sock with a toe sticking out of it.
Yep, it is a painting. A large painting, probably the height of a person.
Now,
of a foot.
Furthermore, in front of him, I just noticed this as I'm looking at it.
Stick figure.
There is literally a stick figure.
There's a stick figure in the background.
Go to the next panel, there is a finger with a band-aid around it. And what an art piece it is.
I just love the idea that they were like, hey, Steve, we're at an art gallery, so you gotta have some paintings in the background. And he was like, okay, what would be art? A foot.
Foot with a toe sticking out, stick figure. Which must have been so fun for him to draw.
Yeah.
And then, I do like that Peter comes in and he's like, this stuff is art, I'm glad I'm a science major. At least he sees...
He sees it for what it is.
Now, I will say, Wilson Fisk would come in here and be in shock. He would love what he sees going on.
He would buy the
stick
foot.
figure painting.
I think he would buy the foot.
He would stare at that stick figure painting like his life depended on it.
Yeah, for sure. So this is obviously J. Jonah Jameson's art exhibit. These issues have really reminded me that he's like a millionaire.
Yeah.
Obviously paying the people for Scorpion, and now during an art exhibit. But this happens to be the art exhibit that the what are they called? The Masters of Crime or something like that.
Oh, that's another thing. We skipped past their amazing name.
Let's see, where was it? Uh,
Or is that afterwards?
it might have been after. It might have been after they got away. Well,
Yeah,
this band of circus freaks, basically, they use this guy with a metal head as a battering ram,
They pick him right up.
and then the brilliant plan, masterminded by our fearless leader, the clown. He rides into the art exhibit on a unicycle, juggling, and just starts putting on a show.
He's like almost running over people. He's like, oh, someone's getting suspicious. I gotta keep the crowd back. And he literally says out loud, stay back, folks. Think how embarrassing it would be to get run over by a unicycle.
He's literally corralling them on a unicycle.
He's like, if you get run over by this unicycle right now,
You're going to
you're
feel
gonna
so
look like a
dumb.
fool.
Yeah.
You're gonna look like a fool. Everyone's gonna laugh at you. So I'd step back.
And the only person who suspects anything is JJ, and Peter kind of sees him backing up a little bit. And JJ gets knocked the F out.
By Cannonball Head or whatever his name is.
Yeah, cannonball. He hits him over the head with his metal head. JJ gets conked. Peter and Betty show up just in time to see them running off with the art. And JJ's injured. So Peter obviously recognizes these people. He knows that they were the ones working with Ringmaster. He's gonna go and track them down. Well, his spider tracer's not gonna lead him to them.
Yep.
It's gonna lead him to the Ringmaster.
Yep.
Who is at the police station.
Snitching. Not really.
I don't really know what he's doing, but he's not under arrest, and he's not doing any crimes. So Peter...
Well, the police, I think, called him in to question about what's going on.
That's right. And he's just
His
like,
alibi check.
I don't know what's going on because I got ousted from them. Which is a weird thing to admit to the police. But Peter, now this, in my opinion, is weird.
Yeah.
Breaks into this man's home, takes his hat, and hypnotizes him.
What are you gonna do?
That's a bit much. An innocent
What are you
guy
gonna-
hasn't done anything. Well, I guess he has. He did his time, right? And you're just gonna hypnotize him and leave him there for hours.
Right. I mean, I deserved. He was rearing and ready to do some more crime. So honestly, my conscience would be cleared.
I guess.
You gotta do what you gotta do. He finds out where they might be hiding.
He finds out, yeah.
The big band of circus freaks.
And
This is when they think about their name.
They do, yeah. And this also, he does call Betty at the hospital to check on JJ. And she's like, oh, that person's voice was muffled behind a mask. So she doesn't quite figure out who it is. But, yeah, we get their name. The Masters of Menace.
Masters of Menace.
That's an okay name. But
It's a name for the whole team, like the Avengers or something. Huh, clown?
yeah. Also worth noting.
Oh yeah. Okay. So how about the Carnival Champs or the Big Toppers? I think the Big Toppers would have been great.
The Big Toppers. I don't know what that was intended to mean.
I don't know.
But
I mean,
with
nowadays-
modern slang, it does not hold up, and
I think
and that's all I'm gonna say on the
I think
topic.
Big Toppers would have been absolutely amazing.
Also worth noting, it is Princess Python who does come up with the name. Again, she's the freaking leader. I mean, she's clearly the main villain here.
Just be pulling the things in the back that doesn't want, kind of like, if they get caught, maybe, hey, I don't know.
I
I don't
guess,
know nothing.
but
He's the leader.
yeah,
Clown's the leader. Go fuck the clown.
don't blame it all on the clown, man.
I don't think he has a license to ride that unicycle. You better check that out.
But Spider-Man does find them. He shows up. There's a fight scene. Not much to discuss here. Typical Steve Dicko art, kind of panel to panel, fighting the different characters. The clown still riding his unicycle. It's got to be hard to fight on a unicycle, so let's give him some credit. Let's give him some credit for where it's due there. But the really important thing about this scene is Princess Python basically using her womanhood to get the upper hand on Spider-Man. In the sense of, he won't hit a woman, pretty much.
At least at this moment.
At this moment in time, which I think we talked about it the first time we recorded this, nowadays he obviously hits women that are supervillains.
Clocking them.
Because I think that's fine if they're supervillains, but back in the 60s, no. He can't hit a woman. So at least it's chivalry and not sexism. But
Right.
she uses this to get the upper hand on him, basically. He won't hit her, so she's like using that to get advantage. And pushes him into a room with a giant snake.
She's interesting. First off, doesn't look like a python.
She says python. I'm pretty sure it looks like an anaconda.
Why?
Well, it doesn't really look like any snake, but it's more resembling an anaconda.
Some type of serpent.
Now, this poor snake, man.
That's what I also said. I mean,
I don't like snakes, but it is an innocent animal. And this man ties it in a freaking knot. That's gotta hurt, right?
no, I don't. You can't even tie a snake. Well, you probably could tie a snake in a knot, but it's probably not gonna stay like that forever.
I mean, he like double knots that thing. So
It's definitely abuse.
it is. Spider-Man abuses animals in this issue.
I mean, confirmed. I wouldn't do this to my snake. Let me just say that.
Yeah, I mean, if it's a giant snake trying to eat you, I guess it's a little justified. But
Yeah, then who cares? I'm giant snake trying to eat you.
Yeah.
Kind of thing I'm not.
yeah, so he ties him in a knot and then chases after
Oh.
Princess Python, and then everyone just gets the karma that's coming to them because the ringmaster shows up to conk the clown over the back of the head. Poor clown. I really hope he comes back. I have no idea if the clown ever comes back in another Spider-Man comic book. I really want him to come back.
I hope it gets his own Sony live action movie.
Honestly, wouldn't surprise me. Get that trending on Twitter, and we'll make it happen. But no, the ringmaster hits the clown over the head, and then the ringmaster gets caught by the police with the stolen art. Clown gets caught by the police because he's knocked out, and then Princess Python runs out straight into the police and gets caught by them. So Spider-Man kind of doesn't catch any of them.
But they all got caught.
They all got caught because of his interference, and I think he actually called the police, so he did save the day. But this issue ends with him talking to Aunt May, and she is mad at him because he came home late and he didn't call. This is really important
Very important.
because this moment leads into, I think, the next issue. Excuse me. Oh my gosh. Okay, I got it under control. This leads into the next issue. My favorite moment in this entire episode.
Oh yeah.
So we'll get to that moment when we get there, but just remember that Aunt May is mad that he did not call and he's home late. Because that is
She's so
very
worried
important.
about him being Spider-Man. And now she's trying to put into the perspective, hey, you're out being Spider-Man. I'm worried about you. If you're gonna come home late because you're being Spider-Man, I need you to check in. And make sure.
I don't know about that. I think it's
mean, it's
more
like
she's
me.
worried about a teenager being out at night.
As Spider-Man at night, so you need to call and check in. And he said, "Listen, I'm just running late. Don't worry about the news that you're seeing on the telly."
Where do you rate this issue out of 10? I'm not getting into this Aunt May discussion again.
It's like a 5.5.
I rate
Man.
it a 7.
You're crazy.
Only because the clown carries this issue.
He did. I do hope he comes back. Everybody else can kick rocks. I hope Clown comes back.
The clown is hilarious. I love him. I love that he's the leader for absolutely no reason. He's not qualified at all. I love that his master plan is just to put on a show in the art exhibit. It's great.
I love how his name is the Clown.
Yeah, no, nothing, not the clown of terror or whatever, like just the clown. He's perfect. I love him.
Leader of the Big Toppers. Clown.
The clown. Fearless leader of Big Toppers. But going from there, we dive into the second to last issue in this episode. Probably the one that we were both looking forward to the most. I mean, obviously you were looking forward to 20. I was looking forward to 24. 23 is the return of the Green Goblin. Is it his third appearance now?
Yes.
And this is when his motive starts to make a little bit more sense. I say a little bit.
Watch what you say
It doesn't make a lot of sense.
on this podcast today.
Now.
Issue 23. I will need to talk about what I talked about last time real quick.
Okay.
The tagline, "The Goblin and the Gangster," is something that resonates with me. I love it. I think it's beautiful. The splash page is actually my phone background or my phone home screen. There it is. That's my phone home screen. I think it's actually a picture of the comic. Like I took. I don't remember. I love it. I think it's great.
What I'm gonna say, before we dive into this issue, I love this issue. Green Goblin's awesome. It has one of my favorite moments from all of the comics we've read so far. But I did not hesitate to criticize Scorpion. I am not going to hesitate to criticize how freaking dumb the Green Goblin's plan in this book is.
Oh my god! I wish I could put hands on internet people sometimes. This is one of the times.
It's a dumb plan.
Dude, Doc Ock had 5 other.
I don't deny that was a dumb plan.
5 other supervillains, and he said, "Let's fight them one by one, style, like a
Hey,
WWE match."
I was the first one to say that was also a dumb plan in that comic book, but that does not negate the fact that Green Goblin's logic in this book is stupid. And to kind of dive into it and give the overall summary, his plan, right, is to go to this mob of gangsters, and he says, "Hey, I'm in charge now."
Love it.
The leader of the gangsters goes,
He's not saying the clown's in charge now.
You're right.
I'm in charge now.
He says, "I'm in charge," and the leader of this gang goes, "No, you're not. Get out of here." And so they fight, and Green Goblin leaves, and he kind of goes over a little bit of his motive, right? He wants to become the Green Goblin King of Crime.
King of Crime.
Which is kind of his recurring motive. Like, he wants to become the King of Crime in New York.
I mean, great idea.
Yeah, it's cool. I'm down with it. But it doesn't work the first time around, right? Going in and just saying, "Hey, I'm in charge," didn't work. So he goes back. Now, before we get there is a scene that we are going to talk about. Because you've been really pushing this Aunt May theory. If ever there was a point where I would maybe agree with you, it is this issue. Because Peter leaves... It is this one. Peter leaves his Spider-Man costume hanging up in the attic.
Oh no, it wasn't. It was the last episode. I remember that. Sorry.
That was when it was in the trash.
It was in the laundry bin or something.
In this one, he leaves it in the attic, and I feel like there's definitely a chance that she would see it up there.
Sure.
So I will leave that open as a possibility.
She's like, "I need to get my china."
Yeah, whatever.
Petey's not here. I feel it myself.
Yeah.
I'd like to go back and point something out though, just because for my love for Green Goblin. First off, I love the whole mobster stuff. I love that. I love the gang. I love the Goblin gangsters.
Mm-hmm.
They call him. They say, "You must be nuts, Goblin." That's incredible. He's standing there in front of this whole crowd, and they're pretty much making fun of his costume. 2 things. So the glider, at this point, he can stand on it while it's on the ground. It seems.
Yeah.
As well as it has a little handle in the front.
Where?
Look at the splash page.
Splash page. Oh, I see. Yeah, to kind of hold it in the middle.
Yeah. Interesting.
Just changing the layout a little bit.
It's nice. It's nice, and also you can see that there must be growth within his own technology throughout the series because the glider gets bigger.
And he does have some more gadgets in this. He has his pumpkin bombs, which is this the first time he has pumpkin bombs?
No, he has them in 6 or 17.
I thought he was throwing frogs and stuff back then.
He was, but I think there was pumpkin bombs in that too.
Okay, well, he starts to have pumpkin bombs a little bit more. He has the sparks out of his finger, a lot of the typical Goblin gadgets that we've still never really seen in the movies. That's the one thing that I think I wish the movies had done, is had a little bit more of his gadgets, because, I mean...
Yeah, they never really had anything past pumpkin bombs.
Pumpkin bomb, which is his iconic one, but I like the sparks and everything like that. Obviously, Willem Dafoe was the perfect Green Goblin, but I just wish I wish they would have had a little bit more of that.
Willem Dafoe the glider with the rockets and the bullets and stuff. So I mean that kind of.
Yeah, I guess it would have been really corny, but it just would have been cool to see. The other kind of subplot happening in this book is Peter seeing the letter from Ned Leeds on Betty's desk and being like, "Oh, she's still talking to that Ned Leeds guy." Could not care less.
Nope.
I am not invested in Betty and Peter anymore. They had their chance. It's over. But the main story, of course, is obviously around Green Goblin. So skipping over the Betty drama, not that important. Green Goblin returns to a informant from that gang.
Yep.
Who is he's snitching. And so Green Goblin is going to basically turn this information over to the police.
He's snitching.
Here is why I say this is a dumb plan. Because as we see later in the issue, it does not work out the way Green Goblin wants it to. And we'll get there.
Let me get 5 of the most dangerous villains of this guy. Let's not fight them together. Let's just one by one.
One other thing to mention for this issue, there's a lot going on in this issue. There's the Betty Brant Ed Leeds thing, there's Green Goblin with the mob, and then Foswell is back. The big man.
The big man.
The big man who was the villain in issue 10. So he's returning now in issue 23, and Jonah Jameson has hired him again to be a reporter.
Right.
So they kind of want you to think that he's corrupt.
Right.
Obviously. How did you feel about seeing him back? Because I know you like the big man.
I like the big man. Do I like Foswell? I don't know. I think it's pretty cool. I wish he kind of stayed bad, and I don't know if maybe he goes bad again.
Maybe. I have no idea.
But I like the big man. I like the name the big man. I like the big man in general. Oswald's all right.
Yeah. I mean, it's definitely...
I kind of wish he stayed bad. Instead of because I feel like the big man had a very he's the big man. You don't see the big man be like, "Hey, please have my job back." It's like, no, he's like, I'm gonna go,
break his legs. I'm
gonna go break everyone's legs that I see.
He's sleeping with the fishes.
Someone's sleeping with the fishes, and it's gonna be whoever he deems necessary.
Yeah.
Not hey.
But that is kind of what they want you to think. Is he's coming back, and they're going, "Oh, is he still bad?" Like Peter suspects him. And the readers are meant to suspect him. Pretty much from the get-go, reading it, I was like, I'm pretty sure that he's not going to be bad. But one thing to note is Green Goblin gets the information about the gang. It then gets turned into J. Jonah Jameson from Foswell. So Foswell is Green Goblin's informant? Or they have some sort of connection there. Like, obviously, somehow Green Goblin got it in the hands of Foswell. So there is some connection there. I don't think
Foswell and Green Goblin working together. The big man and Green Goblin. I want to see that comic.
I think it's happening. I think it might be happening. We'll have to get into next episode and see because they don't really resolve it in this issue. They kind of leave that mystery hanging.
Oh wait, yeah, okay.
But the police go and go to stop this mob, and the Green Goblin's there to make sure none of them get away. And Spider-Man sees the Green Goblin fighting these mobsters. Now, this part was really jarring to read because him being like, oh, Green Goblin must be wanting to be a hero now. Like, let me help him. Is crazy to read knowing the history. Like, obviously, Green Goblin ends up becoming Spider-Man's nemesis, right? Like, pure evil. So seeing a Spider-Man that is so inexperienced with him, so naive and young, to think that he might be good was, like, shocking for me.
There was a lot of really, I think I said this the first time, classic Green Goblin Spider-Man stuff in this too. Like I just like panels and stuff. Yeah,
I love the panel of him flying through the window and he's crouched over his glider and he just tosses 2 pumpkin bombs. It's just a classic pose. It reminds me so much of the 60s animated show where he would sit on his glider and fly around. His ears are so big in this costume.
And his eyelashes are crazy.
Yeah, he's got that Maybelline.
There's even like Spider-Man once again in the water tower. There's so many water towers.
Always a water tower.
That's classic.
And yeah, so he's like, all right, I'm going to help Green Goblin. And Green Goblin's like, oh, sweet, Spider-Man's here. I'm going to leave. So Spider-Man's kind of confused by that. And now we have my favorite scene in this entire episode. Spider-Man, in the middle of this fight, goes into a side room and closes the door. He sits down on the desk, picks up the phone, and he dials Aunt May to call her and let her know that he's going to be late tonight. I would love to see a live-action adaptation of this scene because it would be so funny.
Yeah, you can definitely see that with Tom Holland, too.
Yeah.
Like, pull it off pretty well.
Yeah, Tom Holland would totally pull it off, except for, the awkward part where, spoiler alert, Aunt May is dead. But they could do it with someone else. Yeah. Maybe. I don't know. But it's just hilarious to me. The thought of, like, you hear these mobsters banging on the door, and he's just sitting there on the desk like, hey, Aunt May, just checking in. Like, how you doing? I'm going to be home late. It's so funny. And there's literally a panel of him with his, like, legs crossed and his mask half up. And he's just sitting all nice and just doing his thing. It's hilarious. I love it.
And even Aunt May's like reaction to herself, like, the dear boy, no matter what he's doing, he hardly ever forgets to call his Aunt May.
Yeah. She's like, oh, good for him. And then he's like, all right, let me go back to fighting these mobsters, I guess. And
that panel though, he's just sitting there, is so classic. Like,
it's just sitting there cross-legged on the phone, just chilling. And he lays a web net that catches most of the mobsters, and they kind of get away. And he ends up stopping them, and then he goes and fights Green Goblin. And they have a pretty classic Spider-Man Green Goblin fight.
Yeah, again, like there's a lot of classic stuff that goes on in this issue. I think this might, I'm not 100% sure, but the first time he calls him Gobby.
Might be.
Yeah. We're in some type of facility. Amazing artwork, obviously. Amazing ink.
A lot of yellow and orange colors.
There's a lot of just plain backgrounds, but you know, Green Goblin using his like webs against Spider-Man was pretty cool.
Yeah, they definitely. This fight, you really see how evenly matched they are. Because every other fight, it's always like either Spider-Man just makes a mistake and gets beaten, or he just absolutely destroys the other person he's fighting. Whereas, like, Dr. Octopus was one villain where they were pretty evenly matched, but then Spider-Man ends up getting the upper hand. Green Goblin, he just cannot beat in a fight. I mean, he's like, oh, let me use my web, and Green Goblin burns it with his sparks. And he tries grabbing his glider, and Green Goblin has a gadget for that. Like, it seems like he's prepared for everything, and they're really matched as Nemesis.
Well, they both, and this may be that's not actually not true, but it is one of the only like super enhanced people he's fought so far. Like it's been him, Scorpion, I guess Sandman. I guess okay, maybe there's a lot.
Kind of Sandman, but not really. Scorpion, Lizard. It's not just that Green Goblin is enhanced. Like they're equal physically.
And intelligence-wise.
But then he's also very intelligent. That's the big difference, is that Green Goblin is smart, and he has a plan for everything. And so I think that really... I really like this fight. This is probably my favorite fight between Green Goblin and Spider-Man so far. Just because 14 was kind of weird with everything going on with Hulk and Enforcers and all of that. 17, you had Human Torch there, and that whole thing. Whereas this fight is genuinely just them fighting, and Green Goblin getting the upper hand and getting away pretty easily. Now, there is the shot where Spider-Man jumps after him, and for about 6 panels, he grabs a lamppost, and then, he falls from that, and then he grabs a pole and tries to jump over here, and then he misses that, and grabs a water tower. He is not together right now.
Yeah, he's all over the place.
But, this is my chance to point out. Green Goblin, he gets home, and he sees that the entire gang has been arrested. And he's like, my plan has failed. How am I supposed to take over this gang if they're all arrested? And that is why his plan is stupid.
Listen, we all have silly plans sometimes. He makes up for it later in the coming years.
He does. And, I mean, I guess the point of this is to point out that the plan was foiled because Spider-Man showed up. Because he had planned for some gangsters to be able to get away.
And that's why this whole thing is... This is making this insane Goblin Man obsess over Spider-Man. This is what's happening. Like, he keeps foiling, he keeps getting in his way. This is the obsession that starts to build.
I still think it was a dumb plan, though.
No, but I'm saying story-wise, this is why the Green Goblin becomes such a big problem in Peter Parker Spider-Man's life.
Up until now, he's mostly just been like, I'll go mess with that Spider-Man guy.
Kind of get what I want more than not.
Yeah, now it becomes personal.
Right. Exactly. But it's pretty cool.
That's pretty much, So that pretty much ends the issue. And Green Goblin's going to be coming back next episode. So we'll see kind of where that continues. Obviously, the story is not done yet. But the issue kind of ends with Peter seeing Foswell at the Daily Bugle and talking with Betty a little bit. And he ends up going home. And Aunt May is bringing up Mrs. Watson again. Whoever this Watson girl is, I mean,
she's gotta be ugly, dude.
I don't know, dude. Straight out of a horror movie, according to Peter, is what he said. And that's
the fit goes hard here, though.
The fit goes hard, and I do think it's funny. We've talked about this before. I don't know if we talked about it when we shot this the first time, or if this was in a past episode. So if we are repeating ourselves, I'm sorry. But It seems like so many issues just end with like the oh, like Peter like leaning on his hand, just like oh, poor Peter can never have anything go right, which just fits the whole like down on his luck vibe.
I don't know. I gotta say, man, you know, the 616 Spider-Man and the Peter Parker that's inside the comics in these issues, and even now, he's so much different than what we have gotten in like almost a lot of the other. And I actually really like this, like the original Peter.
Yeah.
And I could see that if I was a teenager reading these for the first time as they came out, like I would really connect or really attach myself to this guy.
And that is why he blew up. I mean,
Right, exactly.
he was relatable. And that's why I think it is weird that we've never really had a true to the original adaptation of it.
Because he's kind of an asshole. So if you
But it works though. Like it makes
It does.
sense that a teenager with superpowers would do all of these. Like he would be arrogant, he would be selfish, and we get to see him learn those lessons as he goes.
the most we saw that I guess was the first Amazing Spider-Man.
Yeah, that was somewhat close, but that was also like Skater Boy Peter, so not exactly the same thing. I love Andrew Garfield, but some of the decisions they made for that movie, like the writers and the director, I'm not gonna get into it, but it was weird. Another Marvel pinup. So a lot of these early books must have some pages missing. I do love this pinup though. The art's really good.
Pretty cool.
I like the kind of shaded.
I like how all the villains so far are in a little little box.
If I was
I
a-
love that there's all the little villains outside, but there's also at the top, right and left. There's Stanley on a typewriter and Steve Dicko drawing, and there's like I guess that's sweat just like coming off their
Yeah.
face or like
Just like
intensity. Yeah.
racing to do it. If I was a 12-year-old kid bought this comic book, I would put this up on my wall.
Oh no, for sure.
I mean, it's got Spider-Man, it's got all his side characters, and then it has all the villains around it.
them up there is what I look like 2 hours before we have to record trying to read 5 comic books.
Now, I think we have to talk about, of all these villains around this pinup, the obviously most important one is the clown in the bottom right.
Now, I saw your lips just say Doc Ock, but my microphone or my headphones did come out of my.
I did not say Doc Ock.
Did you not say Doc
The
Ock?
most important villain of all of these is the clown in the bottom right.
Oh, the clown. The clown.
Yeah, I think that's obviously the most noteworthy villain here.
I wonder
That or
if-
the alien from the issue 2.
I still can't get over that.
Just casual alien that he just has not thought about since.
But I guess, like you said, there's the Fantastic Four and stuff. So
But I mean, it's crazy to think that we're on episode 5 of this podcast, and we have this many of Spider-Man's iconic villains that we've already seen
I think I
introduced.
said that when we went to into the 15s or after the 15s, like from here it's gonna be in issue 1 to 15 there was like
A new
classic
one
villain, classic
every
villain, classic
yeah.
villain, so it's gonna slow down, but
It's we're getting to the point now where we really get to see the recurring story, and that's what I'm most looking forward to.
and it's very exciting. Yeah.
Yeah, like I
'Cause
actually
huge villains after not even huge villains, somewhat huge villains after this are like the Shocker, Venom, Carnage,
Rhino,
Rhino.
Kingpin comes around. I'm very excited for Kingpin because he's around a lot after he appears.
And I haven't read too many comic books with him in it.
Neither have I, so I'm looking forward to that a lot. But we're getting ahead of ourselves.
You have issue 50 too, right? Which is insane.
I do, yeah. It's
That's
one of my pride
Have
and
you seen
joy.
the prices? Have you seen the prices on those things now?
I really want to get it signed by John Romita. It's
crazy.
that's a huge yeah. It's hard. He's like 93 years old, so I don't have much time to
I want to get my 121 or 122 signed by him.
do it. I think they do mail-in signings, so I'd look into it because that's what I'm looking into. But anyway, diving into the last issue of this episode, issue number 24. Now, I believe I said last episode that this was the issue that I was looking most forward to. I have long said for a while that this is probably one of my favorite Spider-Man covers of all time. I love this cover. I love the blue in the background. I love Peter on the ceiling, and he's got his hand on his face, clearly distressed, and he has Vulture and Sandman around him. I just think the framing of this cover is awesome. I love it.
So, I think I told you this coming into it. For whatever reason, I never read this book. It never really grasped my interest, and so. And for whatever reason, I didn't really look into the cover either. I didn't look at the cover and say, I wonder what's going on here. I looked at the cover, I saw Spidey Goes Mad, and I said, oh, it's a Sandman and Vulture appearance, I think.
and then I just started reading it.
Which I'm jealous because I knew what this book was about. And going into this book, it's clearly written in a way to be kind of a little bit of a mystery, a little bit of a whodunit. Now, spoiler alert, if you haven't read them yet, you should go read them. If you haven't read this book and you don't know what happens in it, before we discuss it, seriously go read this comic book for yourself.
Yeah, if anything, just this one.
Just this one. I mean, I really think it's one of the best that we've had so far, in my opinion. So issue 24, it's obviously the return of Mysterio. Mm-hmm. Which, his first appearance in 13, we talked about how it was kind of cool, but also a little underwhelming. We obviously knew that he was bad the whole time, so it's not like we were brought along for the ride thinking that he was a hero. But this one, you don't know that it's Mysterio until the very end, and that's the way Mysterio should be, in my opinion. And this is where you start to see the psychological elements of him as a character, and this is why I love him.
There's a couple really cool things that I do want to point out, I guess, first and foremost. So, the splash page, there's Spider-Man talking to this therapist or whatever, and then there's Doc Ock, there's Vulture, and there's Sandman in, like, some weird, like, cloud type thing.
Disco lights.
Yeah, so the Mysterio uses, throughout this issue, villains that Spider-Man's fought to mess with him, but the only villains that Mysterio uses are ones that he teamed up with in the Sinister Six, which I thought was really cool.
Yeah,
because it's kind of like, oh, I know, I've met these people, I've worked with these people, I know how to like create their illusion. Mm-hmm. Yeah, he didn't do like the Green Goblin.
Yeah,
you know what I mean. So I thought that was pretty cool.
Yeah, he kind of uses what he knows. But the story of this issue kind of starts with Peter. He needs money, right? He's broke as always, typical Spider-Man story. And so he sees a guy breaking into a house. He goes to thwart them, and he wants to take pictures of it. And then Foswell shows up. So now he can't sell those pictures because then Foswell will know that he is Spider-Man, pretty much.
So the thing about literally the first page where you can see the guy, I don't know if you remember me saying this too.
Yeah.
Breaking into the house,
mm-hmm.
is you just see his shirt and his pants. You don't see his face because he's like going in. Again, I thought this might have been a Sandman, Vulture, or whatever. That looks like the Sandman's outfit.
He has the green shirt, brown pants.
Exactly. With 100%, I thought he was about to see the Sandman in this house, and they were going to fight.
No,
it
is just some robbers. But yeah, a little fight scene. Foswell shows up. He has to leave. Peter goes to the Daily Bugle. I love this scene with JJ. He's looking for the copy boy. And the big red letters yelling out, "Copy boy!" As Peter is like ducking around, hiding from him. This just reminds me of the levels in the Spider-Man video game where you're playing Mary Jane.
Yeah.
Like ducking behind desks and like hiding from JJ. It's funny. Betty pushes his head down. Just a little bit of humor. And he sees another letter from Ned Leeds. So that's kind of continuing that plot line.
Right.
But I don't know if you had any other thoughts about that scene. Didn't think there's really much to talk about there.
No. I mean, I could hear J.K. Simmons' voice every time
Every time.
Big red letters.
I really hope, now that J.K. Simmons is back in the MCU as J. Jonah Jameson, I hope they adapt some of these storylines in the MCU. Like, having him actually take a more villainous role. Because it seemed like, in the Raimi movies, he was always just, he thought Spider-Man was a menace, but he didn't do anything that crazy. But in the MCU, he definitely seems a little bit more crazy. And I think that he might actually make the Scorpion, or make...
Well, Matt Gargan's in the MCU, so...
Yeah, so I think that could be something really cool to see as well. But yeah, Foswell's there, still working, still being all suspicious. But they decide, JJ's new brilliant idea. He wants to turn the public against Spider-Man. So he goes, you know what, let's go out in the public and get negative interviews about Spider-Man. And in the most fair journalism way possible, they clearly coerce people to give negative thoughts. And they don't include any positive ones.
No, there's some positive stuff going on. Starts to be said.
Yeah. This is
shoo.
Fake news happening in the 60s, so it is not a new issue.
No.
But yeah, so... Flash Thompson kind of plays a pretty big role in this book.
Yeah.
He shows up and tells off the reporter. He's like, if you don't print what I say, that Spider-Man is great, I'm going to beat you up. And he starts threatening this journalist.
I kind of like Flash. I mean, other than the bully,
being part. I kind of like Flash. I mean, I think people that are hotheads in comics are just always funny.
Yeah, and I mean, ultimately, you are kind of supposed to like Flash. I mean, over the course of
Yeah,
the
I guess
series,
so.
you start to sympathize with him a little bit more, and he obviously changes a lot. But so yeah, he's defending Spider-Man, and then typical stuff's happening with Peter talking to Liz, and Flash is seeing him and telling him, "Stay away from my girl." That's all kind of the same recurring thing.
Hey, yo.
What?
Look, the page where Flash is like clutching his arms like this.
Yeah.
The panel right after that. Do you see the guy behind the guy holding the newspaper?
Yeah.
What does he look like for you?
It's kind of gray.
Yeah, what's up with that?
I think it's just
Man's-
a problem with the coloring.
That man's gray.
I think
It's Mr. Negative.
it's just a problem with the shading. He does look a little bit weird. But now, enter the next scene. J. Jonah Jameson gets a visitor.
Mm-hmm.
It's this psychiatrist.
Psychiatrist from Europe.
There it
He's
is.
very interested in Spider-Man. He's had similar cases before, so he's a very sick man. He knows he's a very sick man. He's in a fantasy world, he says. He wants to be a spider, but of course he's a human being.
Yep.
This guy wants to be a spider.
Yeah.
There's people nowadays that want to be just certain animals, So this is again something
Ahead of the
that's
time.
happening today was happening in the '60s.
Ahead of the times. One inconsistency that happens here. Foswell says not Foswell. The psychiatrist says he's visiting from Europe. He's visiting from Europe.
He's vacationing in Europe.
Later in the book, they visit his home in New York.
He's got a vacation home in New York, man.
So there's some inconsistencies in his story.
Where do you vacation for the summer? He said.
I don't know if it's intentional. Maybe Stan Lee just messed up and wrote vacation and then he gave him a home, or maybe it's intentional to poke some holes in the guy's story.
I'm sure it's intentional.
I'm gonna give the Stan Lee the credit to say that it was intentional, but that is something I noticed when I was reading it, because obviously I knew and I suspected, but I read it and he said he was on vacation and then later he visited his home. I was like, that doesn't add up.
So maybe I'm dumb, but at this point, still clueless.
I mean, it's still, they keep the secret pretty well, in my opinion.
It was probably until the first fight with like Doc Ock and stuff when stuff started just disappearing.
Okay.
I was like,
Yeah.
all right.
So Peter, being the suggestible guy he is, reads in the newspaper, "Spider-Man is crazy," says this psychiatrist, and he starts to sweat.
Right.
He is sweating. He goes, "Maybe I am crazy. Oh my gosh."
I see.
And just doesn't even question it for a second. Just goes with it. Doesn't
It's
add
playing
up.
with his head. It's getting with his head, and it pretty much makes him want to actually go to this therapist at some point. To get help. But before that, he starts running around, and there's this weird cat on a balcony, or on a building, as he's swinging around. And all of a sudden, in a very instant, Doc Ock shows up.
Now, I think we talked about this when we recorded this episode the first time.
Right.
Did you notice the cat the first time you read this?
I noticed the cat, but I noticed nothing else.
I noticed the cat immediately, and I could tell there was something up with this cat, because there's never a random cat just in a panel, and the way the panel is framed, I mean, the cat is in the forefront, like it's there, noticeable, and I think it's brilliant.
I might have noticed the cat, or I might have actually just noticed the what was it? Was there a bat before that or something?
There is a bat later on, and I think I remember you saying you didn't notice the cat.
Yeah, I didn't notice the cat. I noticed the bat.
The cat is in 2 frames. It's in this frame, and then Doc Ock and Sandman start attacking him, and you see the cat again. So when I saw it the second time, I was like, okay, something is up with this cat.
What if there wasn't something? Were they just...
There's just a random cat there. I mean, it adds a little bit of change to the dynamic, but I immediately suspected. And then he keeps swinging, and then the bat flies by, and that one's more prominent even than the cat. And then Vulture shows up. So all of these villains.
That's after Sandman and Doc Ock show up and then disappear.
Yeah.
Out of thin air.
So Spider-Man thinks he's going crazy, man. These villains are popping up. They're disappearing. He doesn't know what's going on. He thinks he's hallucinating. There is a great panel of him just highlighted in red, just looking absolutely terrified.
Yeah, that's amazing.
He's losing it a little bit, which is slightly concerning that it takes very little to tip him over the edge. But
And he just kind of like, right. He looks in the mirror. He says, I look like a ghost," and then he books it out of Aunt May's house, and Aunt May's like, "What the hell just happened?"
yeah, she's getting suspicious. She thinks
I'm sure
something's
he
going
heard me,
on.
but he dashed out with even answering. Something must be troubling the poor boy.
And
If only he confided in me and let me help. Dude, she knows.
or she just thinks something is troubling him, and she wants to know what. She doesn't know what is troubling
I
him.
don't think so, no.
But this
But
man,
yeah, so he runs out of the house, he changes into his Spider-Man outfit, and he rings the doorbell of this man's vacation home, I guess,
yeah,
to talk up to
his
the
home
psychiatrist.
address. I don't
His home
know.
address. That's, I guess, was on the newspaper. And yeah, it's in his article.
He just enters this guy's home, pretty much.
Yeah. He enters his home, and what I like that I noticed that there's a fish bowl with a little fish in it. As soon as you walk in.
It's a little hint.
Now again, little hint. I like that a lot. But he walks into the house. He sees a light at the end of a hallway with the door slightly creaked open. He walks into the room, and everything is upside down, as well as the psychiatrist who's sitting in his chair at the desk is upside down. Everything's upside down. Peter thinks he's hallucinating. And what is pretty cool is that the dialogue bubbles are upside down for the psychiatrist who is on the ceiling.
Love that detail. I don't know how hard it was to do that back then, because I mean nowadays with a computer, obviously you can just kind of rotate it. But yeah, the text is upside down, so you kind of had to turn your whatever you were reading on to read it. But Spider-Man immediately just starts running. He thinks he's going nuts, and I think he ultimately also doesn't want to talk to a psychiatrist because he's worried about giving away his identity.
Which has happened before.
That's happened before, but he's like, oh, okay, you know what? I need help. I need this guy to talk to me. So he sits him down. He's still hallucinating. Now he's seeing Vulture and Doc Ock, and he's just kind of losing it in the chair.
It's going crazy.
And then some other characters come into the fray. Specifically, J. Jonah Jameson finds out that this psychiatrist is a fraud. So he goes to the address to barge in on him. Well, Flash Thompson happens to be walking by. Flash Thompson's mad at JJ, so he goes barging in, and they all go running in on the psychiatrist. And that's when things hit the fan.
I like that Flash is literally chasing J. Jonah Jameson. JJ has a cigar in his mouth, just, screaming at Flash, and he tells him to go play in traffic. I love it.
Why don't you go play in traffic?
I love it.
That is,
Yeah, JJ barges into his house as well. Flash Thompson still, again, he pokes his head into the house as JJ is running in, and he goes, and yet another thing I gotta tell you. This kid is just chasing this old man, just screaming at him.
He's like, we're gonna picket your place.
In someone's random house, still going off.
And JJ barges in and says, you're a fraud. And he realizes that he barged in right as Spider-Man was about to get unmasked. So in a way, J. Jonah Jameson just helped Spider-Man, and then yeah, he really feels like a fool for that.
And then Flash barges in, and he's like, "Spider-Man, if you're in trouble, I'm gonna help." And then he
tackles JJ.
He tackles JJ immediately.
Tackles JJ to the ground.
Spider-Man, I think, realizes what's going on at this point, and he does. And then he tackles the psychiatrist, rips off his fake mask to expose Mysterio.
Quentin Beck. This is like a
Quentin
Scooby-Doo
Beck,
moment.
Literally
Unmasking
is.
him. I would have gotten away with it if it weren't for you rotten kids.
Do you ever see this is what he reminds me of, the Scooby-Doo animated Frankenstein?
Yep. He has
The
the
guy
same
who
haircut.
was Frankenstein. Yeah, the same haircut, same head.
It's a Scooby-Doo moment. I mean, he would have gotten away with it
That's
if it
crazy.
weren't for JJ and Flash.
Yeah, literally.
And then, of course, we get some exposition where Mysterio reveals his grand plan. He had the cat and the bat making hallucinations. He had the fake room that was upside down, the whole thing. And JJ has his typical, oh my gosh, I've made a fool of myself again. I printed fake news.
If I just didn't barge in, Spider-Man would have been unmasked.
Yeah, he would have been defeated. And then Flash is like, woohoo! We saved Spider-Man. I got to help him. And the issue ends with Peter and Aunt May talking. And Liz is there, and he actually goes to study with Liz. So they're kind of having a little thing going on.
Yep.
So he has a bit of a happy ending, actually. Walking off into the sunset with Liz, which is not the girl he wants to be with. He'd rather be with Betty, but That's not happening.
And as Peter does get home, though, Aunt May is so worried, obviously, because she didn't call, he didn't tell her what was going on, and very heartfelt moment. May says to Peter, "After all, Peter, you're all I have left in the world, and if anything should have ever happened to you, she knows, she knows. Let me tell you
Possibly.
something."
Possibly.
Oh, possibly.
Like I said, if ever there was an issue where I think it made sense, it was last issue with the laundry and this issue with him running out. I mean, these starting to be things that would put suspicion. Like, I don't think Aunt May is stupid. I think she's starting to suspect. They do, in these early issues, kind of play her out as, like, the, kind of, not ditzy, but, like, they
What's the word?
They don't play her out as the smartest character in the world.
She's doting. She's nodding. What is
Doting, yeah, doting is part of it, but just kind of, I don't know, a little vacant-minded. But
Right.
later in the comics, she becomes a lot sharper, and I think that is something that maybe they weren't thinking about that yet, but I think she's a smart lady, and I think she's maybe starting to suspect a little bit. So I do think there is some credibility to the theory that she knows. I just don't think it's confirmed. But
It won't. I won't be confirmed till
overall,
1995.
this issue is definitely my favorite one this episode. I rate it 9 out of 10.
I really, like I said, I really like Scorpion, and I really like Green Goblin. Obviously, I'm gonna put those two issues above this one. I don't know, something for whatever reason. This, even when I was a kid, like I said, I never read it. Like, it just never kind of enticed me. It was pretty good, though. I enjoyed it. It was definitely different, and it was the first time Mysterio actually started, I think, messing with Peter's head.
Yeah.
So I don't think he really did that much in the Sinister Six book.
He just had decoys of the X-Men or whatever.
Oh, right.
Which
So,
he did like
that's
illusions and stuff, but this is when it's psychological.
Yeah, the rest of
And that
So
is, in my opinion, the best Mysterio. So I think I always loved this book because of the cover. Reading it again, I just love the story. What was your rating out of 10 for this one?
I give it an 8.
Okay, so still a solid rating.
No, definitely. It was a great book.
Okay, so
Did I rate issue 23?
yeah, I think you gave it like a 10.5 or an 11, right?
No, that was 20.
Okay, what did either of us rate 23?
I don't think we skipped right over that. What do you rate issue 23?
I give it an 8.
I give it an 8 as well.
I think it's good. I don't think it's perfect, but I think it's good. I think the Green Goblin fight at the end pretty much is what made it an 8 for me.
Yeah, it was awesome.
That and the scene with him calling Aunt May. Love it. So some great books this week, definitely. Next episode,
Very nice.
we are diving into issue 25, 26, 27, 28, and 29. We are seeing the return of the Green Goblin. We are seeing J. Jonah Jameson really become a villain properly. First appearance of the Molten Man, and the return of the Scorpion. Which issue are you most looking forward to next
There
week?
is so many good things happening here. I'm very interested in 25, but I'm not, because I feel like it's going to be like, I think it's going to be mid, but I'm interested to see what it's about.
Yeah.
Never read it. I don't know if you have.
Nope, never read it.
Issue 26, 27. I know. 2 great issues. I'm going to really enjoy reading them again. What?
Well, I think we talked about this when we recorded it the first time. Issue 26 is the first appearance of the Crime Master.
Right.
And it's kind of a mystery to his identity. And I think we talked about how you didn't know who it was. And I actually do remember who it was. I don't think I've ever read it, but I somehow found out.
Does it get put in these 2 issues?
I think it's revealed in issue 27.
How the hell did I not remember this? Because I read these multiple times.
I'm pretty sure, if I remember correctly, 26 is the first appearance and 27 is the death of this.
How I don't remember that?
Of this
I
Crime
put when I was a
Master.
kid. All right. Well, I guess we'll see.
But I'm excited to come next episode and discuss this because it is an interesting plot twist, and I'm looking forward to that. I think the issue I'm most looking forward to, I would have to say 28, possibly, because I am looking forward to seeing the Molten Man, because as a kid I remember always thinking the Molten Man was really cool, but I don't remember any of his comic books, so I'm excited to actually read it. And then I'd probably have to put 29 on there. I was disappointed with issue 20. I made that very clear in this episode, so I'm excited to see him return and see if the Scorpion is any better, because I've never read 29, so I have no clue.
Let me put it this way. I'm excited, very excited for issue 26 through 30 because I recently picked up a 30, if you remember. So I'm just kind of interested to see about that. I'm the least excited about 25.
I would agree with that. I mean, that's probably the least exciting one. It's still exciting, but the least exciting out of all the 5 next week. But yeah, so if you're reading along with us, you guys, 25 through 29, we will be back to a weekly schedule with this podcast. I know we've been gone for a long time. I am able to record podcasts again, so we're going to be back to every single week. I think this one should be up on Tuesday, but going forward, we will be back to our normal schedule going on Mondays every single week. So we will see you guys next week, next Monday, on the channel, on podcast platforms. If you do listen on podcast platforms, whether it's Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, make sure you give us a rating. Whatever you think is fair. So, 5 stars, obviously.
At least.
I know Apple and Google have ratings. I'm pretty sure Spotify has ratings now, too. So, give us a rating. Share it with your friends. Get everyone involved on the Comic Club. We'd love to have you here. Check out socials. You can see it on the YouTube page. Go and follow JP Creations on YouTube. TikTok at It's JP Creations. Instagram at j.p.creations. And you can, of course, subscribe to me on YouTube, DA Comics, TikTok at DA_Comics, Twitter at RealDA Tweets, and on Instagram now, actually, I announced this on the last episode of Around the Boxes. I don't have it on here yet. I am back on Instagram. I haven't posted anything yet, but at DA Comics, you can go and follow me there, and I will have some Instagram posts and reels and different things come in there, so I will see you guys over there. But unless you have anything else to add?
No, I think there's a lot of more content coming from both of us on a bunch of different platforms and different topics. So
Yep.
Keep your eyes peeled.
Keep eyes peeled. Definitely some content coming over on the JP Creations side. I'm waiting with all you guys. I mean, I'm just as excited. And definitely, if you haven't checked it out on YouTube, I have Around the Boxes. That's where I show my new comic book pickups, talk about the new releases, different back issues I've got. My most recent episode, if you guys haven't seen it, go check out the most recent episode of Around the Boxes. I got multiple CGC books that are awesome, and you should go check those out.
CGC criminal.
I'm addicted to buying CGC books, but and more content coming as well on the channel. But I'll have more information about that coming very soon. So I'll see you guys there. But thank you guys for listening. We'll see you guys next week, and appreciate you.
Bye.
Peace out.